Today we have a special guest speaker. Alyssa Little just recently returned from a mission trip, and before she goes off to college, which is coming soon, Mama, Alyssa so many of you have supported her in prayer and in other ways, and Alyssa wants to share with us about her experience. And so, Alyssa, we invite you to come and tell us what you will about your time at mission. You'll probably want to adjust that.
Can everybody hear me? Am I good? Okay. Before I dive into what my trip was about, I just want to thank many of you for supporting me in this trip. Without financial support and prayerful support, I wouldn't have been able to get there first, and then secondly, I wouldn't have had the experiences I've had. This place is super special to me, and it's changed my life for the better. And so I'm just going to kind of explain to you day by day our itinerary and what we did. The main things that we went down to do are construction and VBS. There is a church, there's a town called Bagasses, and there's kind of two parts of Bagasses that I'm familiar with. There's a nicer end, if you will, and then there's a not so nice area. And the church that we're doing construction on is in the not so nice area. It's not a new church or anything like that. It's a church that's been there for a while, but the old building of the church got infested incredibly bad by bugs and you name it, it was probably in there. And it just became a super dangerous situation for the people of the church. And so a few years back, the leader of our team just became super prayerful about given the opportunity to go down there and build a new church and have the resources and everything like that. And so to see God's faithfulness in just that whole situation has been incredible. So last year, I went on this trip last year also, and we got down there and the church was basically just like a concrete slab on the ground. And so last year we built walls. We did a lot of the bulkier, more so stuff. And we did walls. We got the roof frame on it. We got a tin roof on it and stuff like that. But this year we went down and they had, while we were gone, they don't really have windows. They have like iron bars kind of that work as windows. So those were there. And so this year was more so cosmetic things. We did electricity. We did painting, the inside and the out. We started a construction of a bathroom out in the back. And then we kind of started hopefully what will become a children's building. So I thought the construction was going to be a lot easier this year, we'll just be painting and stuff like that. But our days were long and hard. We kind of hit the ground running. We got there on a Tuesday, and then that Wednesday, we were at the church at 7 a.m., and we worked till 5 every day for 3 days. And then on Saturday, we worked till noon, and then we went around the neighborhood they kind of name their neighborhoods after their churches. So this neighborhood is called Corazon de Jesus, which basically means the heart of Jesus, and which is really neat because, not all these people go to church. So faith down there is super important to them. And so anyways, we walked door to door and handed out flyers for this VBS that was going to be on starting the next week. Monday through Thursday, we would have a VBS. And that Saturday night was a super special night to me. We wanted to be able to just kind of serve them and present the people that we kind of partner up with. There's a church called Tribute in the nicer area of Bagasses that we kind of partner up with their youth group and go and serve this other part of Bagasses. And we just kind of wanted to serve them and just thank them for having us and hosting us, because each member of my team stays in a home there. And so that night we made them chili. They're not familiar with chili, and so we made them chili, and it was such a hit. It was super awesome. But kind of backtracking, there is a group of women that come from this Corazon de Jesus church and from Tribute that come and serve in the kitchen all week. There's an outdoor stone kitchen. It's a super, super neat thing. And they stay in this kitchen all day long and cook for all of us. And so that night we kind of invaded their space and went in the kitchen, and our team put together the chili, and we were able to serve it. But before we served it, our team leader invited the women from the kitchen in. I was like, okay, like we just want to pray over the night. We want to pray for the people going to get the food, pray for VBS coming up. And I was like, okay, yeah, great, perfect. And then she looks at me and all these women are, she's like, Alyssa, you want to pray? I was like, oh, yeah, I would love to, of course. And I was thinking I had to pray in Spanish. And so I like start praying and trying to, with my broken Spanish, she's like, what are you doing? Like, you can pray in English. I was like, oh. So anyways, I start praying in English, and I'm just saying, thank you so much for having this opportunity to be down here again. Thank you for my team and that we put this chili together. Thank you even more for the mouse that are about to eat it. And then I hear, like, what sounds like bugs, like, all around me, like crickets, like, pss, 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 pss. And I kind of stopped and look up, and I see all these kitchen women with their hands pointed towards me, and I'm going to get emotional, sorry. All their hands pointed towards me, praying over me as I'm praying for the night. And there's just nothing that can really describe how neat and different. That's just kind of describes this town and this place as a whole. They're so selfless and so giving of themselves. And so anyway, that was a super special night. And then the next day is Sunday. And Sunday is my most favorite day of the week down there. Last year, that day probably in and of itself transformed my life so much. Churches down there, it's called Tico time. They kind of aren't really time conscientious, and so you just kind of show up when you show up and leave when you leave. And so last year I stayed with a family that kind of showed up when they wanted to show up, and so we got to church late last year, and there were so many people inside. They pulled up a bench like outside, and I kind of got to sit and see the whole front area. And there's this woman named Cynthia down there that I became super close to, and in the middle of church, I see her walk down to the front, and she just starts, like, dancing. And it wasn't weird. It wasn't, like, what is she doing, like, distracting. It was the most beautiful thing. That church service was the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced, and I was moved to tears for it. And I'm like, Alyssa, you can't cry because you can't translate to them. Like, I'm not upset. I'm just like, this is the most beautiful thing I've seen, because there was also the pastor kind of sits on the side, and there was another man that reminded me of my grandfather, and for many of you, you know how close I was to my grandfather. And he, in the middle of worship, they worship for like 2 hours, I'm not even kidding. And in the middle of this worship, he just literally falls to his knees and lifts his hands up and just like yelling and praying. And it was so cool. Like, they're just so ashamed. And then a little bit later, the pastor literally falls on his face right before he goes up to preach, and he's just praying to the Lord. Like, I don't know what he's saying, but he's praying something good, I guess. And so I was super excited for church this year, because how great it was last year. And the message this year, from what I could get of it, I didn't get the whole thing, obviously. It was basically about God's plan for your life. And there was some story in the Bible they were talking about a horse. That's really all I could pick up on that. But basically about God's plan for your life, and just how it made me realize that there's nothing really that God can't handle. It mainly left me with the thought of, and I wrote it down, it left me with the thought of, why was I born here in America? To the parents I have, with the personality I have, with the healthy body that I have, the hair color I have. I don't know the answers to that, but I do know, and I have to trust that it was God's plan for my life. And I trust in his sovereignty, because he's sovereign and I'm not. And I'm sinful and he's not sinful. And it left me with that thought, and it's been heavy on my heart just thinking about that. But that Sunday was super special. It touched my life even more than last Sunday. I didn't think that was possible. And so anyways, the rest of that day is kind of a really big family thing down there. Sundays are. So we all went to my family, my mom from this year, her mom's house. And we were all hanging out, eating lunch, eating rice and beans. I think I ate rice and beans 12 times 3. So every day, every meal. And so we were eating lunch, and then we all finished. So we went out on the front porch, and we're hanging out. And my mom asked if she could braid my hair. And I said, sure, of course. And so my mom was braiding my hair, and then I guess the week it caught up to me at this point, because I can't keep my eyes open. I am about to fall asleep. And then I literally fall asleep on the front porch and laid out on the front porch with all these people around me. And this little girl, Vielka, did too. She was my little cousin. And then the next thing I know, I'm woken up, and they have taken a mattress off their bed and brought it onto the front porch for me to sleep on. And like that just encompasses completely who they are. They're, like I keep saying, they're so selfless and giving of themselves. And that was super cool. It was kind of weird, but I mean, I don't know why they didn't just take me to bed. But anyways, it was super nice, and Sunday was a great day. But it was a great way to start into the next week. Monday we were at construction still. We did construction 7 to about noon-ish. And then we would have lunch that the women made for us. And then VBS started at about 1:30 every day. The first day, the name tags team was lacking somebody, and somehow I got volunteered to be on the name tags team. And the name tags team is basically like, we welcome the kids, and we're like, have them fill out a piece of paper for, where they're from and if any emergencies happen or anything like that. And then we have to write their name on a name tag. And not only is it a completely different language, it's a completely different alphabet. So for instance, this one girl, Emily, so I thought, said, hey, my name's Emily. And I was like, okay. And so I spelled Emily, like you spell Emily. And I slapped it on her and kept going. She's like, no. It's like, there's only so many ways to spell Emily. So I tried again, and she was like, no. How do you spell this? And so I get this one girl over, and I had to add like 7 letters to this name. I didn't think it was that hard, but it was very comical that day. I had so many names that I had no idea how to spell. The E's are the I's, and the I's are the E's, and then the J's and the G's. It's all so confusing. But that was VBS. We kind of did the same thing every day. We had a games team, a craft team, drama, like we did messages and stuff like that. So one of the biggest things that I want to talk about from VBS was we did the same thing Tuesday, and then Wednesday we did the same thing. But Wednesday night, we told the students, hey, go home, have dinner, get cleaned up, and then come back with your parents, and we're going to have kind of like a night of presentations of what y'all learned throughout the week at VBS. And that night, I know I keep saying this about a bunch of nights, but that night was super special too. All the parents had come back, and we were all crowded into this church. At this point, it had electricity, and when we brought the women from the kitchen over to the church to surprise them with the lights, it was one of the most moving things. They all broke down into tears, and just the simple thing of being able to turn a light switch on and lights pop on, that's something we take for granted, and to see how much it touched them and how incredibly thankful they were was awesome. So we were down there in the church that night, and all the parents were there. We had put together dances of the younger kids to show their parents. But the older kids, we did this thing called cardboard testimonies. And cardboard testimonies, if you don't know, is basically you have a piece of cardboard, and on the front of this cardboard, you write your sin, struggle, what you struggle with the most, something like that. And then on the back, you flip it around to where you say, like, this is how God's pulled me out of this situation. This is how, I have turned to the Lord instead. And there were a bunch of different, it was kind of the older kids. So older kids, I mean ages like 7 to 13. It's VBS stopped at 13. So there were a handful of kids that had done these boards throughout the week, and explaining it was super special. We explained it, and then they kind of went and did their own thing and really got to think about what they wanted to put on this board and just become kind of vulnerable to a sense. And so there were all different kinds. There were sweet ones like I used to lie, and then they would flip it around and say, now I'm honest. And then there was sweet ones that said, I didn't respect my parents, and it says, now I do. And different ones like that. There was one sweet little boy that put, I used to bully my friends, and then you flip it around and he said, now I respect them. And then there were really deep ones that really hit hard. There was one little girl that was itty bitty little girl, and on the front of hers, I'm going to get emotional again. On the front of hers, it said, translated, it said thief, stealer, thief. And this little girl to have to turn to something like that at such a young age down there is something none of us should ever or would ever expect to face. And then she flipped it around, and it just translated the word helper, just simply helper. She said, I used to steal, but now I'm a helper. And then there was this one little boy that was probably one of the youngest ones, and I couldn't, like, for some reason, obviously I have very broken Spanish, but that night I could so easily understand what was on these cardboards, and that had to have totally been a God thing. But there's this one boy that walked out, and his said a Spanish word. I had no idea what it was, and so I turned to the girl next to me, and I said, "What does that mean?" She said, "It means drugs." I was like, "What? Drugs? Like, this boy is maybe 8 years old. What does she mean, drugs?" And I was so shocked that this boy, like, he was put in a situation at such a young age that none of us should ever have to face, to turn to drugs, or that to be something he learned to cope with things. And then he flipped it around, and on the back it said, "Now I praise God." And if only to see that vulnerability out of an 8-year-old, it just kind of like made me think about a lot of things in my life and how thankful I should be for many things that I have and that I failed to be thankful for. And so that night was super special, like I said. It definitely touched a special place in my heart that I didn't even know existed. And anyways, the next day was Thursday, and it was kind of a day where we got to do fun things with the kids. So we took them down to a waterfall down there, and that was a super fun day. And the last night is that Thursday night where we all go to Tribute, the main church that we kind of partner up with, and get to hang out with our friends and with our family. It's such a great night. It's an emotional night. We laugh and we cry. We kind of talk about the week. Me and my friend Gabby, we got to sing a song for them. We learned a song in Spanish here. We got to sing it for them down there. So that's a super fun night. But the worst part of that night is knowing the next morning is the morning we have to get up to leave. Leaving is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Last year, I really did not think I was going to make it, but I did. And so I was I remember last year thinking that morning, I'm really not like that emotional. Like, I think I'll be fine, but I was way wrong. And then this year, I remember thinking, okay, like, you're going to be emotional, just I already know that on the front end. And I got there, and I was fine. Maybe I was numb to a sense that I was leaving, but I was fine. But then the bus pulled up, and I wasn't fine anymore. I completely lost it, but it kind of made me think, like, why is this so hard for me to leave? Why? I've been here for 2 weeks. Why does it feel like I've been here for 2 hours? It doesn't seem like it's been 2 weeks. It's never going to be enough time down here. Like, why is that? But it made me realize, like, I'm thankful it's hard, because if it wasn't hard, then I wouldn't have had the experiences I had. I wouldn't have been touched the way I've been touched. It's just a place, I keep saying, it's radically changed my life. Last year, before trips like this, I kind of just like to have like a specific prayer that I like to pray throughout the week. And last year, I kind of prayed like, "Lord, just break my heart for what breaks yours." And he was faithful to that. He broke my heart for sure, and leaving broke my heart. All of it broke my heart. And going into my senior year of high school, going there kind of made me realize, like, this is the Lord's plan for my life. I felt, and since that last year, I felt truly called into the mission field. Where, how, when, I have no idea, but I'm excited for it. I'm excited for him to send me, and I'm excited to say yes. But this year, I prayed, like, just show me how me giving you my worries, because going into college, obviously, I have all these new worries, I have all these new fears and all that, and just my prayer was kind of like, show me that if I give you my worries and the things I'm scared about, that, and trade it in for a heart of worship, how you will just provide for me and be there, and how I can see you show up in my life. And down there, he totally did that. When you're down there, you're not distracted at all, and it's just kind of you, and you can wake up in the mornings and do your devotion. There's, I don't have my phone, I don't have friends trying to call me or pull me in all these different directions. And so this year, I just kind of figured, like, there's such power and a heart of praise just for the Lord, just thankfulness. And it kind of, last year I would say I was changed more so in my faith. I was challenged to come home and be bold in my faith. I was challenged to come home and not care what people think, just be a daughter of the Lord. And this year I would say I was changed definitely from the inside, but I think it changed me more on the outside, as in coming home. And I remember the first night I came home, I had gotten my hair braided very tight, and it hurt very bad. And so I asked my mom to take them out for me, and she was taking my braids out, and I just started crying. She was like, what are you crying about? And I was like, how is it that I get to come home and lay in this bed? How is it that I get to come home and take a hot shower whenever I want, because they don't have hot water down there? How is it that I can just go in the pantry and grab whatever cookies I want to eat? Like, how is it that I can do all that and they can't? Like, it's just normal for me. It's not something that I go out of my way to be thankful for. And so I was definitely changed in terms of just thinking, like, not everybody has this. And so while we're down there, our team leader put together a devotion for us of a bunch of different people, and our team leader's husband wrote this one. And before I finish talking, I just want to read it and just kind of explain how it kind of just encompasses what my trip meant to me. It says, it was about their son. One day when John Andrew was a teenager, his car was out of gas. He was in a hurry to get to church, so he grabbed a can and put a few gallons in his tank. This would have been okay, but he had put 2 cycle fuel and oil gas mixture for small engines in his car. As he drove to church, his car ran very rough, and the engine quit a few times as he would come to a stop. As soon as he had a chance, he drove to a fuel station and put gasoline in the tank. After this, the engine ran well. The problem was resolved when the car had the fuel for which it was designed. And I was like, okay, that's a cool story, funny, but like, what does that have to do with anything? And he continued to say, I remember this story often because it relates to us as God's children. We were designed to live in a relationship with Christ. John 10:10 reads, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. We can live without Christ, and many do just that. Like the engine with the wrong fuel, it is a life that is rough and does not go well. On the other hand, a life with Christ is much more fulfilling. There may be some rough spots, but we can rest assured that Christ is there for us, getting us through the tough times in our life. This trip made me realize that there is a God so powerful. Standing in this church on Sunday and thinking back home, there's another church service going on that I would typically be at the same time, and 2 different types of people with 2 different languages praising the same God, and that he's ever so present at both of them is so incredible. To think that we serve a God that is all-knowing and omnipotent, and it's something I can't understand, and it's something that I am so thankful for. My life has like the song we sang, he's touched me and made me whole, and I couldn't be more thankful for that, and I couldn't be more thankful that his plan for my life brought me here, because if I was following my own plan for myself, I would have no idea what Bagasses is, and that makes me super sad, because Bagasses there's no place like it in the world, and there is no place that has truly touched my life like this place. So I want to thank y'all again so much for giving me this opportunity. Many of y'all supported me financially. That got me down there, and then y'all's prayers I thank you from the bottom of my heart for them, because my trip yet again has been incredible, and I can't wait to see if the Lord takes me back down there or where else he may call me. So thank you so much.
We've been talking recently about the parables, and today's parable is about the small things, the seemingly insignificant things like mustard seed. And how we've talked in recent weeks about how we hear the gospel, the message, differently. But if we receive it, those who receive it and pass it on to the next generation, that's who really receives it well. That's what you've done. And Alyssa. And now Alyssa has taken that message and left a little bit of yeast and a few mustard seeds in other parts of the country, of the land, that will grow into great trees of love and compassion. She's left a little bit of yeast that will leaven the bread. And so I thank you, and I thank you, and I thank God. Our closing hymn today is number 701. Is that right? Yep. When we all get to heaven, I invite you to stand as you're able.